You don't need to fight your mind. That's the first lie you were taught. That control means resistance. That discipline means force. That peace comes from winning against your thoughts. It doesn't. And the more you try to fight your mind, the stronger it becomes. What you resist persists. Carl Jung. Every time a thought appears and you push against it, you give it importance. You make it real. You turn it into something that needs to be solved, fixed, or eliminated. So your mind produces more of it. More doubt. More noise. More resistance. And now you're trapped in a loop. You think you resist, it grows, you fight harder, it grows more. And you call that discipline. It's not discipline. It's struggle. And struggle is what's exhausting you. Not your life. Your resistance to your own mind. You wake up, and the thoughts start. You don't notice them at first. They feel normal. Automatic. But then one sticks. Something about what you need to do. Something about what could go wrong. Something about who you are. And instantly, you react. You try to control it. You try to replace it with something positive. You try to force your mind into a better state. And in that moment, you've already lost. Because now you're engaged. Now you're fighting. Now you've given that thought power. And your mind knows it. So it continues. It feeds you more. Because it has your attention. And attention is what keeps it alive. You think your problem is overthinking. It's not. Your problem is attachment. You attach to every thought as if it matters. As if it needs your response. As if it defines something about you. It doesn't. Most of your thoughts are noise. Random. Conditioned. Automatic. They come from past experiences, fears, habits, patterns you didn't consciously create. And yet you treat them like truth. You engage with them. You wrestle with them. You let them control your state. And that creates struggle. Not the thought itself. Your reaction to it. Do not be carried away by the impression, but say to it, "Wait for me a little." Epictetus. That is the shift. Not control. Not suppression. Distance. The ability to see a thought without reacting to it. Without needing to fix it. Without needing to follow it. You let it appear. And you let it pass. No resistance. No attachment. No meaning. Just observation. And at first, this feels wrong. Because you've trained yourself to respond. To analyze. To control. So when you stop doing that, it feels like you're losing control. But you're not. You're gaining it. Because control is not forcing your mind to be quiet. It's not needing it to be. Right now, your peace depends on your thoughts. If they're calm, you feel okay. If they're chaotic, you feel overwhelmed. So your internal state is unstable. Because your mind is unstable. But what if your peace didn't depend on that? What if your thoughts could be loud? And you remained unaffected? That is a different level of control. Not control over your mind. Control over your reaction to it. And once you understand this, something changes. You stop trying to eliminate thoughts. You stop trying to fix your mind. You stop trying to reach a perfect mental state. Because you realize something simple. You don't need to. Your mind can do whatever it wants. And you can still act. You can still move. You can still live without struggle. That is the separation. Thoughts happen. You choose what to do next, not based on them, despite them. That is freedom, not silence. Independence. You are no longer dependent on your thoughts to feel okay, to act, to move forward. And once that dependency breaks, the struggle disappears. Not because your mind changed, because your relationship to it did. Stop fighting your mind. You've been trained to believe that control means resistance, that if a thought is negative, you must replace it. If it's distracting, you must eliminate it. If it's uncomfortable, you must fix it. So every time your mind moves in a direction you don't like, you react. You push back. You try to take control. And in doing that, you strengthen the very thing you're trying to escape. Whatever we resist, we feed. Carl Jung. Because resistance is attention, and attention is energy. The moment you resist a thought, you lock onto it. You follow it. You give it importance. And your mind responds by producing more. Not because it's working against you, because it's responding to what you focus on. So the more you try to control your mind, the less control you actually have. This is the trap. You think you're being disciplined, but you're just engaged in a quieter form of struggle. You are fighting internally, constantly, and that fight is exhausting you. Not your work, not your responsibilities, your own resistance. Look at how this plays out. A thought appears. Something simple. You might fail. Immediately, you react. You try to counter it. No, I won't fail. You try to replace it. I'm confident. I can do this. But now you're in a loop. Because your mind doesn't stop. It responds again. What if you're wrong? And now you push harder. More positive thinking. More control. More effort. And the thought keeps coming back. Stronger. More persistent. Because you never left it alone. You kept feeding it. This is why your mind feels loud. Not because it is naturally loud. Because you're constantly interacting with it. You've turned every thought into a conversation. And that conversation never ends. Because you never stop responding. You've never learned to let a thought exist without engaging with it, without correcting it, without trying to control it. So your mind stays active, not on its own, because of your reaction to it. Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen. Epictetus. Apply that to your mind. Stop trying to force your thoughts to be different. Let them be what they are. Because the moment you stop resisting them, something unexpected happens. They lose intensity. Not immediately, but naturally. Because without your attention, they have nothing to hold on to. They pass. Like everything else. But you've been interrupting that process. You've been holding on to thoughts by trying to get rid of them. That's why they stay. So the shift is simple. Not easy. Simple. You stop responding. A thought appears. You notice it. And you do nothing. No reaction. No judgment. No correction. You let it exist. And you continue with your action. That is control. Not engaging. Because engagement is what creates struggle. You don't need to win against your thoughts. You need to stop playing the game. Right now, your mind sets the terms. It produces something. You respond. It produces more. You respond again. And the cycle continues. But what happens if you don't respond? The cycle breaks. There is nothing to continue. Nothing to escalate. Nothing to fight. And in that space, something appears. Silence. Not forced. Natural. Because you're no longer creating noise through resistance. This is where most people misunderstand. They think peace is something you achieve, something you build, something you earn. It's not. It's what remains when you stop interfering. Your mind doesn't need to be fixed. Your relationship to it does. Because right now, you treat every thought like it matters, like it deserves your attention, like it defines something about you. It doesn't. Most of your thoughts are irrelevant. They don't require action. They don't require analysis. They don't require response. They require nothing. And once you start treating them that way, your entire internal experience changes. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stop reacting to every impulse. You stop fighting a battle that never needed to exist. And that creates something powerful. Space. Space between thought and action. Space between stimulus and response. And in that space you choose. Not react. Choose. That is freedom. Not the absence of thoughts. Independence from them. You can think anything, and still act in alignment with what matters. You can feel doubt, and still move forward. You can experience noise, and remain unaffected, because you are no longer attached. You are no longer engaged. You are no longer fighting. You are observing, and acting. Separately. That separation is everything. Because once you have it, your mind loses control. Not by force. By irrelevance. It can say whatever it wants. And it doesn't change what you do. That is the level you reach. Where your internal state no longer dictates your external behavior. Where thoughts become background. And action becomes primary. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Epictetus. What is in your power is not your thoughts. It is your response. And your response can be nothing. No engagement. No reaction. Just action. If this is starting to change how you see your mind, stay with it. How to detach completely. You don't suffer because you think. You suffer because you believe. That is the difference you've been missing. A thought appears. On its own. Uninvited. Automatic. But the moment you believe it, it becomes something else. It becomes weight. It becomes emotion. It becomes direction. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. Epictetus. Your mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Most of them are random, conditioned, repeated patterns from the past. They are not instructions. They are not truths. They are noise. But you don't treat them that way. You treat them as if they mean something. You give them authority. And that is where the struggle begins. Because once a thought is believed, it shapes your state. You feel it. You react to it. You move according to it. Not because it's real, because you accepted it. That acceptance happens instantly, so fast you don't even notice it. A thought appears. I'm not ready. And before you even question it, you feel hesitation. You slow down. You delay. You stop. Not because the situation changed, because your belief did. That is the mechanism. Not thought. Belief. And belief is optional. But you've never treated it that way. You've been accepting everything automatically, without question, without distance, without awareness. So your internal world feels heavy, complicated, overwhelming, because you're carrying thoughts that were never meant to be carried. You're holding on to things that were supposed to pass. That's why your mind feels loud. Not because it produces too much, because you keep everything. You don't let anything go. You store it. You analyze it. You attach meaning to it. And over time, that builds pressure. Mental pressure. Emotional weight. And you call that overthinking. It's not overthinking. It's overattaching. Do not be carried away by the impression, but say to it, wait for me a little. Epictetus. That pause is everything. That moment between thought and belief, where you decide whether to pick it up or let it pass. Right now, you don't pause. You absorb. Automatically. So we change that. You slow down your reaction. Not your thinking. Your reaction. A thought appears. Instead of following it, you notice it. Clearly. Without judgment. Without urgency. And you let it sit. You don't push it away. You don't pull it closer. You don't analyze it. You don't fix it. You let it exist. And in doing that, something becomes clear. You are not inside your thoughts. You are observing them. That separation is what you've been missing. Because without it, everything feels personal. Every thought feels like it defines you. But once you see it from a distance, it loses that power. It becomes what it actually is. A passing mental event. Not a command. Not a truth. Not an identity. Just something that appeared and will disappear if you let it. But you've been interrupting that process. You've been grabbing onto thoughts, holding them, expanding them, building on them. So they stay, they grow, they repeat. Not because they're important, because you made them important. Now you stop. You let them pass, one by one, without engagement, without resistance, without belief. And at first, your mind will resist this. It will try to pull you back in. It will produce stronger thoughts, more emotional ones, more convincing ones, because it's used to your attention. It's used to your reaction. And now it's not getting it. So it pushes harder. That's not failure. That's adjustment. You stay with the process. You observe. You don't engage. You let it pass. And over time, something shifts. The thoughts lose intensity. Not because you forced them to, because you stopped feeding them. They become quieter, less frequent, less relevant, not gone, but manageable. And more importantly, they stop controlling you. That is detachment, not separation from your mind. separation from your belief in it. You can think anything and remain unaffected. You can feel anything and still act. You can experience noise and maintain clarity, because clarity is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of attachment. You don't need silence to be effective. You need independence. Independence from your internal noise. That is what allows you to move freely, to act without hesitation, to live without struggle. Not because your mind is perfect, because you are no longer controlled by it. This is where everything changes. Because now, your thoughts no longer dictate your behavior. Your emotions, you resist feeling tired. You resist feeling uncertain. You resist feeling distracted. And that resistance creates friction. So everything feels harder than it actually is. But what happens if you stop resisting? You feel tired, and you act anyway. You feel uncertain, and you move anyway. You feel distracted, and you continue anyway. No conflict, no internal argument, no need to fix anything before starting. That is what makes action clean, effortless. Not because it requires no effort, because it requires no resistance. And that changes how you experience everything. Work becomes simpler. Decisions become clearer. Movement becomes consistent. Because you are no longer negotiating with your mind before every action. You've removed that step completely. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. That applies here. Stop arguing with your thoughts. Stop negotiating with your emotions. Stop waiting for the perfect internal condition. And act. That is how you live without mental struggle. Not by achieving a perfect state. By removing the requirement for one. You don't need your mind to cooperate. You need to stop depending on it. Because dependence is what creates instability. Independence creates consistency. You become someone who operates the same way, regardless of what's happening internally. That is strength, not intensity. Stability. And stability builds momentum. Because now, your actions are predictable, reliable, consistent. You do what needs to be done. Every time. Without internal drama. Without hesitation. Without delay. That's where life starts to move. Not in bursts. Not in moments of motivation. Continuously. And when that happens, something else shifts. Your mind begins to quiet down. Not because you forced it. Because you stopped feeding it. You stopped reacting. You stopped resisting. You stopped turning every thought into a problem. So it has less to work with. Less to amplify. Less to repeat. And naturally, it settles. This is the part most people miss. Peace is not created by controlling your mind. It's revealed when you stop interfering with it. When you stop reacting to every thought. When you stop resisting every feeling. When you stop needing your internal state to be perfect. That's when things become quiet. Not forced. Natural. And even when they're not, you're still unaffected. Because now, your life is no longer tied to your thoughts. It moves independently. That is what it means to live without mental struggle. You think, but you're not trapped. You feel, but you're not controlled. You act without resistance, without delay, without conflict, and that changes everything. Because now, your life is no longer limited by your internal noise. It moves forward, consistently, effortlessly, powerfully. Become effortless. You've been trying to control your mind. Then you learn to stop fighting it. Then you learn to detach from it. Now you remove the final layer. Effort. Because as long as you feel like you have to try to maintain control, you're still not free. You're managing your mind, not transcending it. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Lao Tzu. Effort feels necessary when there is resistance. When you are pushing against something. When you are trying to maintain a state. But what if there is nothing to maintain? What if there is nothing to control? What if your mind can move, and you don't interfere at all? That is effortlessness. Not doing less. Not becoming passive. Operating without internal friction. Right now, even your discipline has tension in it. You force yourself to focus. You push yourself to act. You try to hold your state, and that creates subtle resistance. You can feel it. That underlying pressure. That sense that you're constantly managing something. That's why it's tiring. Because effort is being applied internally, not just externally. So we remove it. You stop trying to control your state. Completely. You don't try to feel focused. You don't try to feel calm. You don't try to eliminate distraction. You let everything exist, exactly as it is. And you act, without adjusting anything first. That's the shift. No preparation. No internal setup. No need to get into the right mindset. You see what needs to be done. You do it. That's it. Your mind can be noisy, irrelevant. Your emotions can fluctuate, irrelevant. Your energy can vary, irrelevant. None of it determines your action. So none of it requires your attention. And when you truly stop paying attention to your internal state, it stops controlling your experience. Not because it disappears, because it becomes background. You are no longer involved in it. And that creates something most people never experience. Lightness. You move without weight. You act without resistance. You think without attachment. Everything becomes simple, direct, uncomplicated, because you removed the layer that made it heavy. Your involvement. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Epictetus. What is in your power is action, not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your internal state. So you stop trying to control what isn't yours, and you focus only on what is. Action. Immediate. Consistent. Effortless. And once this locks in, something changes permanently. You no longer hesitate. Not because you forced yourself not to, because hesitation has nothing to attach to. There is no internal negotiation. No evaluation. No need to resolve how you feel. You simply move. And that makes you dangerous. Not in aggression. In consistency. Because now, nothing interrupts your execution. Not doubt. Not fear. Not distraction. They can exist, but they have no influence. That is what separates you. from everyone still trying to fix their mind before they act. You don't fix it. You ignore it. You move. And over time, your mind adapts to that. It quiets. It stabilizes. Not because you forced it, because you stopped interfering. And that is the final shift. You don't control your mind. You outgrow the need to. You don't manage your thoughts. You become independent from them. You don't try to be disciplined. You act in a way that makes discipline automatic. That is effortlessness. And once you reach this point, there is nothing left to figure out. No more techniques. No more systems. No more strategies. Just action. Clean. Direct. Uninterrupted. That is who you become. If you made it this far, then you already feel it. So don't go back. Don't return to overthinking. Don't return to resistance. Don't return to waiting for the right state. That version of you is done. From here forward, you move. Without friction. Without hesitation. Without struggle. Subscribe to the Unbroken Protocol. And continue to the next video. Nobody is coming to fix you. Because once you stop fighting your mind, you face something even more important. Responsibility. See you in the next video.